Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 HOSPO Health podcast. I'm Sherri Ring. I'm the Chief Happiness Officer for the Tasmanian Hospitality Association, and I'm joined this season by none other than the former Premier of Tasmania, Peter Gutwein. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Sherri, and look, thanks for inviting me. I am so thrilled to be a part of these conversations where we're going to hear stories that are going to teach us, inspire us. I think they'll make us laugh and probably make us cry as well. But it's great to be a part of it. Let's get on with it.
Let's go. Did you know that employees who learn from their mistakes are 30% more likely to develop innovative solutions and improve team performance? In today's episode, we delve into the experience that shape us, the moments when things didn't go as planned, and the wisdom gained along the way. Our guest, Frances Bender, co-founder of Huon Aquaculture, transformed a modest family venture into one of Australia's leading aquaculture companies. Frances shares the key insights that have guided her career, the challenges faced in pioneering sustainable salmon farming, and how embracing obstacles has led to remarkable growth and industry innovation. Welcome, Frances.
Thanks, Sherri. Thank you for inviting me.
It's really exciting to have you.
Frances, great to have you on board.
Thanks, Peter. Nice to see you again.
Well, look, over the years we worked pretty closely together on things, and I must admit, you built with your husband Peter, a fantastic business, one of Tasmania's largest businesses in what should be a business, an industry that we're all so very proud of, but at times perhaps we're not. What reflections have you got now looking back over your shoulder?
It mixed emotions, actually. We sold the business just over 3 years ago and retired. The day the transaction went through, I went to bed and cried. I felt extraordinarily sad. It was actually like losing a child, you've raised this child, you've given them wings, you want them to fly, and there's a time when they need to, and they need to leave home. And that's exactly what it felt like when we left the business. So I did grieve, but I feel really proud of what we achieved in our company, Huon Aquaculture, and also what the industry has achieved and what it has become for the state of Tasmania.
Yeah, and Huon was such an important part of that right through it, and the work that you and Peter did. Tasmania should be really thankful for that.
Yes, and that's probably something that these days I still feel a little sad about. Whilst I feel proud and really enthusiastic about the future for the industry, I still feel that perhaps the recognition of what the industry has achieved and where it's come from and how smart and innovative it isn't really fully understood by some people in the state. And I just wish that would be understood more.
Okay. Well, let me ask you the first question then. What was the most unexpected challenge that you faced in building Huon Aquaculture, and how did you navigate it?
How long have we got? Because every single day there were challenges, and the industry was built on challenges. If you can imagine that when the industry began, no one knew what to do. No one had any idea what to do. And so, when I mean no one, I mean the people in the industry, the regulators, the government, the scientists. There was nothing. And so there were constant challenges, and there were challenges literally as we walked out the door that we had to face. So we made mistakes, and from those mistakes, and with lots of collaboration, we actually achieved what we achieved. So I couldn't really identify one specific challenge because it was such a dynamic industry. Like every time we actually solved a problem or improved a process, during that process we discovered that there were 20 other things that we needed to do. So it was just a never-ending dynamic vertical learning curve to the day we walked out the door, and I think it still is.
Mm. And so, Frances, building on that kind of, those ups and downs, how's failure shaped your journey as a pioneer in sustainable aquaculture?
Failure, I think, is important because it's your ability to actually get up from that failure and move on and learn from those mistakes. So failure was also a common occurrence. We try something and didn't work, and then we think, well, how do we do this? We've got to do this a different way. So I know I'm sounding as generalist, but that really was the name of the game. You know, failure was an everyday occurrence as well. So it's your ability to actually have the resilience to pick up and move forward that actually sets you apart as a leader. If you can't do that and you don't learn from your mistakes, and they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. At times I thought it was going to kill us. Whether it was a production issue or a financial issue, there was always some sort of challenge. You know, there were predators, the weather, the markets. It was just constant. So you were always. It was just so dynamic to be in the business. I don't think, and I've got friends who are in primary industry, and all primary industry is dynamic, but salmon farming particularly it's living on the edge. I did a lot of public speaking, and I likened our lives to living on a roller coaster. There were massive highs and massive lows. I'd try and sort of pick a path through the middle, but that wasn't easy.
It must have been really tough on you and your mental health as well, because I guess, building a company from nothing and being at the top of your game and that sort of roller coaster, the further up you are, the further you fall when you do fail.
Exactly. And to be quite frank, when we built the business, until we floated the business, the business was built on debt and reinvestment of dividends. We didn't take any dividends. The business was highly geared. Literally, our house was on the line. So at any time, that actually keeps you very focused.
I bet.
If you think you're going to be sleeping on a park bench with your kids and the dog, it keeps you fairly focused. Sometimes you're a bit like a hamster on the wheel, sort of just running furiously to sort of stay ahead, worrying about whether or not you're actually going to be able to pay the wages and meet your requirements. So that keeps you very, very focused. But you just have to be strong, and I think the key word is resilient. I was actually going to a meeting in Hobart one day, and I was listening. I quite often used to listen if I was in the car to the Richard Feidler conversations of a morning, and they had Kurt Fernley on there one morning, and I was driving up the road, hearing up the road on the speed limit to get to a meeting, and Kurt came out with this quote that I stopped and I wrote it down because I can never remember things, but I have remembered this one, and it was strength is your ability to harness your resilience. And at that particular time, we were going through a pretty tough time. And I just sat on the side of the road and thought about that for a few minutes and thought, yep, that is absolutely so true. And I thought that's really something that I've referred back to over the years is that quote.
Well, just thinking about that quote, strength is your ability to harness your resilience. Can you share a moment where your values were really tested and how you responded?
There's been a few moments that were particularly hard to cope with. There was the time, and this is relevant to the government, when we were at odds with the rest of the industry, and very concerned that things weren't being done the way they should be. I ended up effectively being treated as a whistleblower, and that was really hard for me personally. But we were right, and we were factually right and scientifically right in what we were saying at the time, and very determined that Peter and I were both determined that we needed to keep pushing through. So that was a really difficult time for us, and particularly for me, because I've always sort of been the face of the company. And then there's been times when we've had gone through the financial cycles, like when the GFC hit. Of course, we meant our timing at times. We were perfect with our timing of managing to hit peak debt when the world collapsed. So we had peak debt hitting when we'd done a big production expansion when the GFC hit. And the same thing happened again when COVID hit. And so particularly when COVID hit, we'd had this plan to go offshore. We'd floated the company. We'd invested hundreds of millions. We'd built our new facility down at Port Huon, the grow-out facility, and we knew we were going to have really high production for a couple of years, which would mean we'd have to export more than we normally did, and the pricing in export's always up and down. But we needed to do that to be able to go to the next stage in our company. And, of course, we did that, and the world shut, and the planes stopped flying. And we were locked up in our house at Huonville, and I looked out the window every day at the Huonville Bridge thinking, whatever are we going to do? Because it's a 3-year production cycle. And I can remember sitting there thinking, we can't just leave the fish in the water. They have to come out. So where are we going to be able to sell the fish that are there now? The next year class is following along behind it, actually in the water. It needs those pens, and those fish need to go ahead of it. And the babies were going across the Huonville Bridge in tankers every single day to go into the sea. And I'm thinking, how are we going to do this? We were actually trying to lease and hire planes. And at one stage, we were the biggest user of air freight coming out of Australia.
Wow.
To actually move our product. We were the largest user of the federal government's freight subsidy scheme to move product out of the country. It was just nightmare material. But we got through, and we all pulled together, but that was a really hard time because it wasn't just our family's livelihood on the line. At that time, we had 1,000 families.
Yeah, that's right.
We had 1,000 mortgages we felt responsible for. So if we went down, then it was going to affect a lot of other people as well, and all those sort of supplier industries around it as well. So it was just so difficult at that particular time.
Mm-hmm. And just a credit to you that you got through.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it was a pretty hard time. And also our first grandchild had been born. We couldn't see her. It was just, I delivered groceries to my parents and leave them in the front yard and talk to them on their front veranda, and elderly parents. And it was just a really hard time because not only was it difficult professionally, it was also difficult for everybody personally.
So how many times in your career do you feel like, you were hanging by a thread, like you would nearly lost everything?
I used to say that, quite often it was like, going down to the casino and playing the roulette and putting it all on the red. So there were plenty of times when we were very close financially. And it was testament to the team, the morale in the company, and everybody pulling together. It was like, because the feeling in our company was it was like a big family, and everybody knew we were in it together. So everybody put their their effort in to sort of make sure that we got through, and that was something that I'll always be grateful for. And that's probably one of the things I miss the most of being retired and being out of the business is that feeling of camaraderie and loyalty that we had as a team.
It's amazing, isn't it, that you kind of look at people that are really successful and you just see the success and all the you don't sort of think about all the risks they're taking and the stress that they're going through and the journey to get there. It's
the same in all small business. It doesn't matter. And I've said this to a lot of our friends who are in small business. It doesn't matter if it's just you're a sole trader or you've got one employee. The risks are still the same. It's just,
but yours were a lot bigger. Yours
just
were 1,000 other people.
The numbers were bigger.
Yeah.
But the same challenges were there, and so I go back to you just have to be resilient.
Our podcasts have had a lot of talk about resilience, haven't they, Pete?
They have. It's been a word that's been used often, but it's a word that describes the circumstance that a lot of people find themselves in, and the need to lean strongly on those core values that they've got to move forward.
And it's okay to have the emotion. I was a woman in an industry where at that level there weren't any others, and at times, I just want to cry, and sometimes I did. And emotion's okay. And some days you just want to be a sweary bear, and swearing's good too because it makes you feel much better.
Don't mention that. Sherri's practiced that.
No, we might have a bloopers reel for this podcast, won't we,
But,
Pete?
Tears, sometimes you just got to let it out. So, it's
part of being vulnerable. And
Oh, yeah. And I think sometimes it's good if people see that you are vulnerable because they realise that you are a human and you are facing these challenges, because sometimes just think, in your position, Peter, as the Premier, you felt responsible, particularly through COVID. You were feeling responsible for, all of us, and the strain of that responsibility is, you go to bed with it and you wake up with it and it's still there the next day.
It doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't.
You've just got to keep moving forward.
That's right.
Now, what do you believe sets apart leaders who adapt and thrive when things don't go as planned?
Their ability to work with their team, their ability to take advice. I was always, like, Peter and I were the two least qualified people in our entire business. We physically had less qualifications than virtually every other person we employed. I left school at year 10. I didn't even go to year 11 and 12. Got no formal qualifications at all. So how did I end up as a director of a publicly listed company? Listening, respectfully listening, watching what other people did, never being afraid to ask the dumb questions, and being human, saying thank you, being interested in people. It's not just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. The biggest asset in any business is not the actual hard assets. It's not the building. It's not the fish. It's not the trucks or the earth moving equipment. It's the people. And if you don't invest in those people to actually care for them, provide a safe workplace, provide training, just be interested in what they're doing. I used to find out more about my business making a coffee or sitting in the kitchen having lunch than I ever felt in any meeting, just chatting. So it's difficult to be a leader, but you can't isolate yourself. If you put yourself in a tower, in an ivory tower, and you're not where the people are, then you won't be successful.
Yeah, that's right. Frances, last question for this part. What's a lesson you've learned that you wish more people in your industry understood?
I feel that collaboration is a lesson that I think it's coming back, but I think it was lost for a while. Collaboration is one of the key reasons that the industry was so successful, because, as I said before, we started with nothing, we knew nothing, we had no suppliers, we had no researchers, we had nothing. And the reason the industry became as successful as what it became was because we collaborated in it, and everybody was passionate, everybody wanted to learn, everybody understood that there'd be mistakes made, but we'd work together, and it wasn't punitive. The attitude was, let's just make this work, right? Well, that didn't work, and you've probably done the wrong thing there. Okay, let's head off in another direction and let's try and look at it a different way, without there being a sort of a punitive attitude. I think I think when the activism ramped up, that became more of an issue for the industry, and I think it actually stifled the industry significantly. We lost that ability to collaborate. I know that we had a gathering that I helped organise with UTAS, where we had people come from all over the world, and we had a couple of days where everybody was sort of working together. And I can remember talking to some of the researchers that had been in the industry for years, and that they had smiles on their faces and, oh, this is what it used to be like. This is great. And we'd lost that. So I think that collaboration, and it's difficult in a commercial scenario because you've got your commercial entities, particularly, there's three companies in the industry, but we've got to be able to collaborate in a way that that actually takes everybody forward without sort of, it being seen to be non-competitive, of course, but certainly I think that openness and transparency helps everybody sort of move forward and will help the industry into the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so many lessons in that for other industries as well. But,
absolutely, yeah.
Now, the quick fire 5. So 5 quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kick off with the first one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and how's it shaped your journey?
The best piece of advice. Don't be afraid to ask the dumb questions, because quite often that's the question that everybody wants to ask.
Yeah.
It's the elephant in the room, and particularly the boys won't actually ask the question because they don't want to look like a goose. I was still asking the dumb questions as I was walking out the door, because if you don't know, then don't pretend. There's a level of fake it till you make it that you sort of need to do a little bit sometimes. But, if you don't know, just ask respectfully.
Good answer. Frances, what's a misconception about you that you wish people understood?
That I am or was an angry person, and that I actually found that quite personally hurtful at times. I think because I was a strong woman and I was quite pragmatic and quite forthright, people assumed that I was angry. And I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, you're not what I thought you were like at all." And I'm thinking, well, what did you think I was like? But I think it's because I have always been sort of quite open and quite courageous as a woman, and I was a woman in a male-oriented business and industry. So, there was me and then there were the boys. So, and Peter and I have always been, our entire life, there's always this sort of, we're just equal. And I would be quite puzzled at times when people thought that I should be something else, because I'm thinking, well, you're not, so why should I be?
Yeah.
Very good. If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self?
Don't personalise other people's behaviours. For a long time, I used to be upset if people had said or done certain things, or even if key staff perhaps had chosen for whatever reason to move on, I'd take that personally. And I'd worry about, well, what did I do that was wrong that might have created that to happen? I now know that it's that person's issue, not my issue. But it took me a while. I'm a bit of a slow learner. I was quite naive, and I still am quite naive. I'm not very political. I'm very black and white, and so when something like that happens, I think, well, why did that happen? And I would personalise it. So you've got to stop doing that, because it's not good for your mental health at all.
No, and I think we all do it as well. It's a tough one. This is a great one for you. We've sort of talked about your legacy before. How do you hope to be remembered, both personally and professionally?
As someone who was strong and courageous, but kind and caring, and someone who was passionate. I think they're the key words. That's how I'd like my grandchildren to remember me, as someone who was brave. And I think you can be all of those things as well as being kind and compassionate. It's a balance, and it's hard sometimes to do that in certain circumstances, particularly occasionally when you run into sort of misogynistic people. Not that I ran into many, but occasionally I did, and that sort of would deflate you a little bit. But then you think, no, that's their problem, not my problem.
Now, final question. What's a book, film or experience that profoundly influenced your outlook on life or work?
It's actually a sad one, and it's an experience. We actually had a workplace accident and death of a gorgeous young man who worked for us. And I knew his parents and I'd grown up with his parents. And it was the most horrific thing that's ever happened to me and to Peter. And it was just such an awful time. But I often think about this, and I've quoted this before actually, but it actually created a legacy for me, because what it did was set a level that no matter whatever happened to me, other than that sort of thing happening to my family, nothing in the business or nothing in my life would ever be as bad as what happened to that family. And it actually gave me strength. It gave me strength to stand up to crabby bank managers. It gave me strength to stand up to politicians. It gave me strength to stand up to activists. It gave me strength to stand up to misogynists. It gave me strength to stand up to board members, because I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen to me? It can't be as bad as that. And so Zach left me a legacy from that horrible event of giving me that extra level of strength and perspective and gratefulness that it hadn't happened to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that's a sad way to end, but perspective is so important.
Yeah. Frances, I've just got to say, you grew up in a different sort of time to the leaders coming through now, and so you grew up in a time where you were running a massive business. You looked after the children. You did all the cooking and cleaning. You are an absolute role model to me, that's for sure, and to probably lots of other women. And you're a proof that you can have it all.
No, you can't. It comes at a cost. You can't have it all, and that's something that the next generation, I think, are better at than what we are. My generation is. There is a cost, and you need to actually put support around you. If you're going to try and do all those things and be superwoman, you actually can't do it all. You need to delegate. You need to have help. You need to have some home help. You may need to have help with your children. But you need to try and find time for yourself. I didn't do any of those things very well, and it came at a physical and mental cost for me at times. And the other thing is, if you're going to do all that as a young woman, don't forget, and I know this is probably, I don't care if it's politically incorrect, don't forget your biology. You can't do it all and then think, oh, I'm 39 or 40 now I've got time to have a baby. It doesn't always work. We had children young, and it was chaos and it was hard work, but they came along for the ride, and they learnt the life lessons at the kitchen table and in the car when I was driving them all over the countryside. And it was very hard at times. At times I felt like a single parent, but don't miss those opportunities just because you think you can have it all and you can have your career and you can do it all, because you actually can't. There is a cost.
That's great advice. And
I'm going to go nowhere near that. Anyway.
Thank you so much, Frances.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.